अश्विनी सगळ्यांना म्यूट फक्त करायचं बघा, कारण ना मध्ये मध्ये आवाज येत राहतात.
I have muted everybody and one by one I'll unmute everybody.
Yeah.
I think Amay, you can start now.
Okay, I'll start. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Pune Optical and Gynec Society, I would like to welcome you all to this panel.
Are you on two devices at the same time? It is a lot of echo.
Okay.
कैमरा है कर ऑफ कर सर
There's a lot of disturbance from your end, I think.
Am I audible now?
मी आज एक मीटिंग अटेंड करते हैं समजा तर मी बस आणि काम करता
Amay, you can start.
Ma'am, am I audible now?
Yeah, with the echo.
There is a lot of disturbance.
Lot of disturbance.
Are you on the headphone by any chance?
मीटिंग लीव करतोय मी. Yeah, start.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I would like to welcome one and all on behalf of Pune Obstetrics and Gynec Society to this panel discussion which is challenges in obstetrics. I would first like to thank Dr. Harshad Parasnis sir, Dr. Ashwini Kale ma'am for giving me the opportunity to convene this session. We have seen over the last few decades how contraception and contraceptive methods have been bound from the primitive methods of coitus interruptus to the newer methods like LARC. We are very privileged to have this esteemed panel with us, which will throw light on this topic and give us a one-stop solution on contraception. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Harshad Parasnis sir to give us the welcome address.
Thank you, Amay. Let me welcome all of you on behalf of Pune Obstetrics and Gynecological Society. I'm very happy today because we have a young Turk, Amay, who's actually taken over as a convener of the session, and we hope to see more of these young people coming in and actually doing a fantastic job. I think he has actually been part of the conceptualization as well as for the execution of this program. Amay, a great job. And today's topic actually is all about contraception, and we have with us my friends from Mumbai Society, from and from Nasik, from Chandrapur, and so contraception, I feel, is all about choices. And let us hear from all quarters of Maharashtra how contraception is actually offered to our patients. And we have none other than our own Parag Biniwale, who is going to be in Parag, who is actually going to guide us through this this session. And without wasting any further time, I think he has actually made a very lengthy session and which is ready for us. So Parag, all over to you. Amay, you can invite Parag for the and continue with the show.
Right, Dr. Parag Biniwale sir. Sir is the secretary ICOG, President Menopause Society Pune. Sir is a unit head and PG teacher from Kamla Nehru Hospital. Sir was a former joint secretary IMS 2017. He has numerous publications and awards to his name. The most humble and charming personality of Pune Obstetrics and Gynec Society. I would like to invite Dr. Parag Biniwale sir to moderate this session. Now, I would like to invite the panelist, Dr. Anita Chauhan. She is the Honorary Secretary, Consultant, Psyche Hospital, King Elizabeth Hospital, Bombay, Secretary, Bombay Obstetric and Gynec Society. Ma'am was a former professor and unit head at CS Medical College, Mumbai. Dr. Manisha Dhate. She is Vice President, IMS Chandrapur, Secretary of the Chandrapur Obstetric and Gynec Society, Director of Chandrapur SCPV Center, renowned faculty and speaker in many national and international conferences. Sir, Dr. Prakash Kothawde. Sir is a senior gynecologist and laparoscopic surgeon from Pune, graduated Pune Obstetric and Gynec Society 2020. Field of interest, high-risk obstetrics, lab surgery. Dr. Nalini Bhagat. Ma'am is the Director, Nashik Fertility Center, ex-President, Nashik Obstetric and Gynec Society. Ma'am is the first Indian to receive master's degree from European Society of Gynec Endoscopy. She is innumerable awards to her name, including the Lokmat Lifetime Achievement Award 2020. Dr. Mingal Patwekar. She is a professor and head of unit, Dr. Diyapati Medical College, Pune. She is graduate since last 10 years and favorite among her students. Dr. He is a professor, Bharati Hospital, Pune, teaching field of interest are higher in gynecology. Professor Kashibai Navdev Hospital, Pune, field of interest are higher obstetrics and infertility. Now I would like Parag sir to start the proceeding.
Thank you, Ameya. Ashwini, can we mute the audience, please? Because there's some noise from the audience.
Somebody from the participants.
Yeah. I think there's some Dr. Vidya who's from whose end there's little noise. Okay. Good evening, all. I bring greetings from Pune, and at the outset, I would like to thank President Dr. Arshad Parasnis, Secretary Dr. Ashwini Kale, and the entire team, Managing Committee of Pune OBGYN Society, for asking me to moderate this panel. And I'm happy to be moderating a star-studded panel, which includes teachers, which includes senior practitioners, and all are going to take us through various aspects of contraception. We know that UNIFES has very rightly said family planning alone could bring more benefits to more people at less cost than any single technology available to human race, and we agree to this 100%. There are some key facts about contraception which were recently published by WHO, and it states that amongst the 1.9 billion women of reproductive age group worldwide, 1.1 billion have a need for family planning, and of these 842 million are using contraceptive methods. It means that there are 270 million women all over the world who do not have either an access or a knowledge about contraception, and we as healthcare providers should try to address the unmet need of these population. The proportion of the need of family planning satisfied by modern methods, Sustainable Development Goals indicator was 75.7% globally in the year 2019. Only one contraceptive method, condoms, can prevent both pregnancy and transmission of sexually transmitted infections, including HIV. So this is something which all of us must keep in mind, especially when we are offering protection against STI and HIV. And use of contraception advances the human right of people to determine the number and spacing of their children. In this panel, over next 1 hour plus, we are going to have certain case scenarios which we come across as clinicians time and again, and we will try and seek solutions from our expert panelists. I begin with the first case, and a 22-year-old P1L1 who's a software techie, delivered by a cesarean section 6 weeks ago and is presently breastfeeding. She has consulted you for pain in breast due to engorgement, and I will ask this question to Manisha. Manisha, how are you going to handle this lady? She's delivered with you by a C-section 6 weeks ago. She has come to you for some other complaint. So how will you proceed further?
Yes. So this, she is a postpartum patient of 6 weeks, delivered 6 weeks back. She has come to me for the breast pain due to engorgement, but I will take this opportunity to guide her and consult her about the contraception during her visit to me. And as she has passed 6 weeks of her post delivery period, I will offer her the various contraceptions from which she can choose it. Say, telling her about the plus and the negative bonds of the various contraceptives that we will offer her, and then treating her for this pain due to engorgement, and also offering her the best contraceptives can be which she can
Right.
use.
Absolutely. So Manisha, you have very rightly pointed out, and this is the first take-home message from the panel, is that whenever a lady comes to you with any medical problem related to either her periods or breast problems or whatever, we should take an opportunity and counsel her for contraceptive. She's a young lady, delivered 6 weeks ago. She definitely needs some help. So, Meenal, I'll ask you how will you help this lady? What are the options that you would recommend?
Prima facie, she is 6 weeks postpartum, and I guess she's definitely feeding her baby.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
that will be the first primary concern, and counsel her about giving her the proper contraceptive choice. So she
Okay.
has a number of contraceptive choices. The first being the progesterone pill. We can also consider, now that she is 6 weeks postpartum, we can also consider to some extent long acting reversible contraception. But since she's had a cesarean section, I would keep that a little guarded. Okay. And I feel barriers always remain, as of they are the commonest and the most easiest way to prevent a pregnancy, but not the most effective though. But I would have to counsel her, explain to her, tell her about different methodologies and how safe and effective amongst these three are. So there is
Okay.
I guess there is a tier system that is there, which tells you that this particular uh, contraception is the most effective. So amongst the tier system, of course, LARC is most effective. But being just 6 weeks post cesarean section, I would definitely be a little cautious in putting an intrauterine device. Maybe an implant might work, but the best would be a progesterone only pill. Barrier, of course, is always a choice for her.
Okay, thank you. Ketki, what about lactational amenorrhea method? We know that it is one of the effective methods, but are we as obstetricians talking about it? What is your view on this? Ketki?
Parag, may I say something?
Yeah,
Hello?
Naita. So I cannot hear Ketki.
Can I say
Dr.
something?
Ketki, you have logged in through 2 devices. So if you could just
Yeah,
log out.
Naita, you can take the question till then. Ketki, I think
Hello?
just yes,
Am I audible now?
yes, Ketki.
Hello?
Yes, Ketki, we can hear you. Anaita, you can go
Yeah,
on till
Parag,
then. It's fine.
I had 2 or 3 points to make.
Yeah.
Before jumping into the options, I think it's important for us to understand that the 6-week visit postpartum is extremely important for the couple to understand that they need to plan their future pregnancy. And
Right.
this is the time when the husband should also be brought on board, because we are offering her all these methods, but we haven't asked her whether she wants any more children or not. So this is a very important point to broach this, that do you want another child after 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or not at all? And depending on what her answer is, we can then opt for the method which we offer her. The second point I wanted to make is, when patients miss out on this postpartum visits. Accidental pregnancies are known to occur in the first year after deliveries. And then they come to us with, seeking termination of pregnancy. So we should emphasize that between 6 weeks and 3 months, we should institute a method. And the third point, what about LAM, that I feel we should emphasize that though it will offer some protection, accidental pregnancies will still occur, especially if she's not exclusively breastfeeding after the first 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, thank you. Anahita, you very rightly pointed out about role of counseling. So whenever we are asking the lady to come back for a postpartum visit, which is usually anywhere between 6 weeks to 3 months, it is important that the husband is also brought in picture. But now with changing times, it is the husband who most of the times accompany, and many a times the decision makers are only husband, the wife, elder in the family, etc. do not come in picture. Of course, it is important that we must talk to them about their future, whether they would like to have another pregnancy, though it is a little too early to discuss. But still, there are some people who would, take a call and talk about it. Ketki, can you elaborate a little more about the lactational amenorrhea method? Ketki, you are muted.
Dr. Ketki, you are unmuted now. Dr. Ketki? You can ask someone else.
Okay, Vandana, can you help us out here?
Yes.
Lactational amenorrhea method?
Yeah, in lactational amenorrhea method, actually exclusive, if the lady is exclusive will be breastfeeding, then it will help to some extent. But if she is not exclusively breastfeeding, then ovulation can occur without getting the periods, and she needs some kind of contraception during this time.
Right. So here, whenever we are talking about the lactational amenorrhea method, we have to be very, very clear and emphatic about telling this to the patient that number one, she has to feed the baby exclusively, not even a single feed of top milk. Secondly, she should be amenorrheic during those 6 months, because it's in case she starts menstruating, lactational amenorrhea method is totally out. And third thing is, it may offer protection to the tune of about 98%, but if the couple has to be cautious and try and use some kind of contraception if need arises. All right, so
there is a rule of three.
To the next case, and Prakash, this, yeah.
So in the lactational amenorrhea method, there is a rule of three is there. In the rule of three, if we say if is a fully breastfeeding mother is there, then there is possibility of contraception is around 3 months. If partially breastfeeding is there, then possibility and contraception will get around 3 weeks. So this is an also important point in talking with the patient.
Right. Yes, Anahita.
Parag, before you move to the next case, I think one of the previous panelists had mentioned that LARC was something that she may not recommend to this patient.
Yeah, Anahita, can we take that little later, because I'm going to ask the panelists about LARC when to be inserted, right? Okay, Prakash, I'll pose this next case to you. A 19-year-old first-year college student, you attend your clinic after missing a period for 10 days and with a positive pregnancy test. You've done her USG and it says that there is intrauterine pregnancy. She wants termination of pregnancy, and she also wants some kind of contraception. So how will you go about it?
This young lady of 19 years old lady, she has underwent termination pregnancy. We have lots of options to her to as a contraception. We can start her on oral contraceptive pills, combined pills, or we can start her on progesterone only pills, and we can start her on also injectable type of the contraceptive injections.
Right.
So before starting any contraception, talking with the patient and taking the confidence of her is very important. because sometimes the myths and
Right.
misunderstandings are there. And as she is 18 years old, she is more concerned about her future pregnancy. She is not known about her reproductive stage. So counseling, reassuring, giving confidence is very important. And making confidentiality about her taking the contraception is very important. So we can start any type of the contraception.
Okay. Nalini, what all the things you will take into account before discussing contraceptive to the young girl who's come to, who's a 19-year-old and who's come to you?
Sometimes what happens, the patient has come for the first time, and for the first time only she had some this problem of pregnancy. Might be she will not be opting for that henceforth also. So detailed history of her detailed sexual history is most important in this case. And if at all she is continuously sexually active, then there is need of contraception in that case. In that case, she should be counseled for the two methods, that is the OC pills and the barrier method only. But what is in her hand is the contraceptive pill only. Then we should ask her about her periods, that is whether they are regular, whether she is PCOD, or whether she is having some dysmenorrhea. In that case, we can change our OC pills pattern. Means if it is a PCO patient, then she will be counseled for the cyproterone acetate combined OC pills. And if she is having endometriosis, then in that case, Dynogest containing OC pills can be given. But in these girls, we should prescribe the low dose OC pills.
Okay.
Parag, can I just
so whenever
add
we,
to this?
yeah, sure.
Yeah, just one more thing in addition to her counseling. I always prefer nowadays the young girls, their lifestyle and the way they think is a totally different. It's coming to our country. The culture is changing. So it's very, I mean, I practice the 5 Ps, you know, when I ask, when these kind of young girls come to us, adolescent girls come to us, I mean, in addition to what Madam said about asking her about her history or her menstrual pattern, all this is true, but it is very pertinent to ask her about how sexually active she is, whether she has one or multiple partners, whether she has had any protection from STIs, or whether there's any history of any STIs, transmitted diseases in the past, and what is her take, and what does she want as far as contraception is concerned. It is imperative for us to ask these questions to these young girls, because at this point of time, they are compliant to us, and also we can give them a good contraceptive advice in which they can continue that on a longer period of time and just not on a short-term basis, so that we don't get unnecessary pregnancies from these adolescent age group.
Even sir,
Anahita.
can I add, sir?
Yeah.
Even we have to give the information to the patient, young girl, about the emergency contraception.
Correct.
Always she does not need to take the contraception, but if she took the emergency contraception, and if you give the extra effort and time to her for counseling for this emergency contraception, then there will be more use of the contraception and less chances of pregnancies are there.
Right.
So that is also equally important.
Okay. Anahita, you wanted to add something?
I wanted to add that one of the previous panelists said that she will be very compliant, and that is absolutely correct. So this is the time that rather than suggesting emergency contraception, we should tell her that she must have dual protection, OC pills to prevent pregnancy, condom to prevent STIs. More importantly, there are privacy and secrecy issues.
Confidential.
If she opts for a injectable and she does not get cycles, then there is a problem at home. On the other hand, if she takes OC pills, she can always explain it off by saying it is being given for regularization of her cycles. Because she's only 19. So, you know, people at home will also be watching her cycles.
True. So just to sum up what everybody has said, we must find out about her lifestyle issues we must ask about menstrual history, whether she has heavy menstrual bleeding, etc. We must ask her about previous contraceptive use. If she has any issues related to it, we must dispel all the myths, and we have to emphasize on dual protection. All of us have said the same thing. The reason why we must tell her about emergency contraception is that this is a plan B that she has. In case, of course, we will certainly ask her to use a contraceptive. If she's regularly sexually active, she has to keep on using contraception on a regular basis, something like COCs and additional protection by barriers in order to prevent STIs and HIV. But knowledge about emergency contraceptive pills is also extremely important, because in case she fails to take contraceptive pills regularly, or she misses pills, then she should have some information about emergency contraceptive pill as well. Ketki, can you hear us now? Okay, Manisha, now this girl has come to you. Would you start counseling her about not having physical relations? And will you tell her that this is incorrect and you should not indulge into it?
Sir, as she is adolescent, past her 18 years, now in our setup where we live, and the adolescent, how they are behaving nowadays, we can only counsel them what is right and what is wrong, but we cannot emphasize that that you should not do like this or like that. But
okay,
we should always warn her what are the problems she is going to face due to this these issues, right from the troublesome pregnancy which she may have. She may conquer STIs in her future life, and all this has to be discussed and should be emphasized that it is not right. Anyone want to add this thing, then anyone can add.
yeah, okay. Vandana, have you gone into a involuntary parental mode while counseling this patient? Because our children are of similar age group, and
Yes,
then
yes.
many a times we tend to be in the we tend to go in the parental mode and start preaching. Do you think
Yes.
that's a good idea?
We have to see what kind of patient we are getting, and
Okay.
then we should decide what to tell to the patient. That's what I feel. So
Okay.
I don't agree,
And-
Parag.
Oh.
Parag, I feel that we are not judge, jury, or God.
Absolutely.
We have to actually counsel in a non-judgmental manner. And patients, whether they are 9 years old, 19 years old, or 29-year-old, respond to you better if you are non-judgmental in your attitude.
right.
I feel that we should never think, oh, if you were my daughter, I would say this. No, we have
Absolutely.
to say that we need you to stay safe. We need you to be free of disease, free of unwanted pregnancy. Try to not have multiple partners, all the other things which have been said. I don't think we are in a position to preach.
Absolutely. I
Yes,
totally
ma'am.
agree with you.
Parag sir.
I totally agree with you. Yes,
Parag
Prakash.
sir,
ऑलरेडी
we
लॉग्ड
should.
इन येत आहे आणि मला की काहीच
Yeah.
ऐकू येत नाहीये.
Hello.
Yeah, Ketki, we can hear you. We can see you now. Hello. Okay, Prakash, go on.
We should not give the lecture to the patient who is coming for the medical
Absolutely,
service.
absolutely.
We
I
should
totally
give
agree.
the confidence and give the treatment, because
Yes.
there are n number of people are
Yes,
giving
sir,
the.
that's what.
Yeah,
So many
I-
adolescent issues are rising.
absolutely. I totally agree with you all. Few years ago,
Because if you
Harshad will
start
remember.
doing this, they will leave us, they will run from the
Yes.
contraception, and they will attach to any quack doctor, and they will end up in the trouble.
Yeah. Okay. Why I asked this question is that about 10 years ago, I had a long argument, and Arshad will remember it, during a conference about the same issue. And I always believe that we have to be non-judgmental. The girl has already made a choice. She has come to us for medical help, and we have to talk about only medical help. We cannot teach her morals. We cannot preach her. And probably you can tell her that 100% way of preventing pregnancy and STIs is abstinence. So abstinence can be one of the choices. Of course, the final choice is hers. Right. So this chooses low dose COC, but comes back in 2 months with unscheduled bleeding while on pills, and she's really disturbed because this has affected her quality of life. Nalini, how are you going to help her now?
If there is unscheduled bleeding because of OC pills, we should ask her whether she is taking regularly tablet or not. If
Right.
she is not taking regularly, then there might be bleeding, unscheduled bleeding will be there. But if, and secondly, she should be asked about whether she is taking it regularly, and on the same at the same time, if she is taking low dose, ultra low dose contraceptive pills, then the pills are to be taken at a fixed timing so that the breakthrough bleeding will not be there. Then if at all, but still she is taking regularly, but still she is having bleeding, then I'll increase the dose of the oral contraceptives, means from short acting to long acting contraceptive, means a large dose.
The larger doses. Yeah. From 15
or,
to either 20, 30 or even 50 if required.
Yeah, right. And or otherwise you can add a dose of progesterone to the OC pills.
Okay.
That will also reduce her breakthrough bleeding. Or otherwise you can tell her to take tranexamic acid also, so that it will stop.
Absolutely. Right. So Nalini has very rightly pointed out, first find out about compliance, whether she's taking it or not, regularly or not, reassure her. Many a times it so happens that if she's on ultra low dose pills, she may experience some amount of unscheduled bleeding or spotting, and typically it settles in first 2 or 3 months. So we can just reassure her and wait and see what happens. Of course, switching to another contraceptive modality is always there. Right. So she plans to continue with the pills after being reassured that the bleeding will settle with time. She returns after a couple of years asking you how long she needs to take them. She's still sexually active, but she's broken up with her former partner. Ketki, can you hear us now? Okay. All right. So Vandana, how will you help her now?
Now, if she is sexually active and she wants to know how long she can take the oral contraceptive pills, so she can take for a longer time, but not without any investigations. When she is on oral contraceptive pills,
she's 19. She's now, but she was 19
young.
when she came to you. Now she's 21.
20. So still she's young. I think still we should test her for a liver function test. We should do her lipid profile, so that whether the contraceptive pills are not harming her, that we should see. And with due precaution, because she has now changing her partner also.
Okay.
So we should always, we should warn her that if she's changing the partner, there is high chance of having an sexually transmitted infections. So she should take a dual precaution. And
right. So dual protection is absolutely a must for such a girl. We would also take this opportunity to tell her about the HPV vaccine, because again, she's a high risk girl. Anaita, do you agree with what Vandana has suggested about the investigation?
I don't agree for two reasons. That in case she's going to have any major side effects with the pill, it usually occurs early in use and not later in use. Second thing is, I don't agree with your case scenario, because I would have emphasized that she should come back to me every year. So she's come back after 2 years, but my recommendation would be to come back every year. And I think a good clinical history is enough. I don't usually recommend any tests for patients who are taking OC pills. And the other point is that again at 19 and 20, she doesn't have money to do a whole battery of investigations. And I can't justify doing liver function and other tests unless she has taken prolonged OC use exceeding 5 to 7 years. That's the point I may decide to do investigations.
Right.
One more history we can ask her, either in her or in family history, either thromboembolism is there, extravenic clot is there, then we can continue the long term or long duration.
That history we would have taken before starting.
Yes, we should ask about the drug history. If she is taking any drugs like
Right.
rifampicin or some which interferes with the action of or decreases
Absolutely.
the.
But
But
Manisha, we will do all these things before we put her on ocipils.
Yes.
Right.
Right. So if she, yes, Anaita?
I said this history I would have taken before
Anaita?
starting OCs. So
Yeah.
on the
Yes,
follow-up, we
absolutely.
just need to find out if there are any new symptoms, if she's getting migraine, or if she has started any new drug therapy. I think
Right.
that should cover it.
Absolutely. And Prakash, thromboembolism issues, etc., will always, we would certainly like to ask before we start her on ocipils. So, when we talk about age-specific restriction of contraceptive methods, CSCs moved from category 1 to 2 after the age of 40 years. And injectables, progesterone-only injections, category 2 before 18 years and does not interfere with epiphyseal closure. So this is something which we have to keep in mind. In a nutshell, when we talk about contraception for adolescents, we have to remember that adolescents are eligible for all contraceptives which are suitable for adults. But proper counseling regarding its use is extremely important. Dual protection has to be stressed upon because it is going to prevent sexually transmitted infections, including HIV. And we can certainly promote abstinence methods for preventing pregnancy as well as STI. Right, we move to the third case. And Ketki, are you able to hear us?
I'm able to hear you.
Okay. Right. So, Ketki, this case is for you. A 31-year-old lady visits you at the 8th month of her first pregnancy, and you bring up the issue of birth control. Right. Many times we do counsel women during her antenatal period, closer to the due date, about contraception. She does not want another pregnancy soon. So, what options you can offer her at this point of time? Remember, she is in the 8th month of her pregnancy. Ketki, are you able to hear us? No. Minal, can you take this up?
Yes, yes, very much. A postpartum contraception actually just doesn't start at postpartum period. I mean, a patient who's with you and in 8th month, I would like to counsel her in the antenatal period. That is a very prima facie back about what are the different contraceptive methods that I can give her immediately after a delivery, how long she wants to postpone her pregnancy. And again, as Anaita madam pointed out, her husband has to be around when he is brought in, that how many years they want to postpone. That is very important. So all these three things have to be given to the patient very much when the patient is in your antenatal period, when she's coming to you for her examination, or if she has not come and she has just walked in, like in our medical college, we try to talk during the postpartum period itself, whenever it is possible, that now you must not have a pregnancy soon, you must delay it for 2 years, 1 year, whatever, but patient has to be started. First thing is to be counseled. Of course, number of options are there. We have the postpartum IUCD insertion, we have the progesterone pill, we have the interval IUD, which we can put after 6 weeks. We have, of course, progesterones. These are the different ones. Postpartum IUCD, we were practicing in our own institute for a while, but we firstly had problems. I mean, we had a lot of expulsion rate and acceptance rate, though it is said that it is very high and the patient is very compliant at that point of time. Somehow we have had bad experiences. Most of the time, probably the expulsion was very high and the patients would come back with a bad experience.
All right. So I totally agree with you, Meenal, that closer to the due date, probably it's a good idea for us to talk about contraception, especially if you are thinking of a post-placental intrauterine device insertion. Now, this lady has heard a lot of bad experiences regarding intrauterine device in a friend, and she's not interested at all. She's afraid of injections and does not want injections. She opts for the daily pills to be taken after delivery. Do you think it's a right choice, Vandana?
Taking daily pill, we should actually properly counsel her regarding all the basket of contraception we have.
Absolutely. But she has zeroed down on
Yeah.
progesterone only pill.
Yeah, we should know why she had a bad experience regarding the intrauterine contraceptive devices. That doesn't mean if somebody else had a problem, then she will also have a problem. So we should try to counsel that. Same time, we should respect her decision also, that if she wants to go for oral contraceptive pills, we should respect that, and we should counsel according to her, tell the available pills which she can take. So in a postpartum period, she can go ahead with a progesterone only pills if she wants to take, because she will be breastfeeding her child. So COCs may not be advisable to her.
Right. So COCs are a no-no anyway if she's going to breastfeed. So when we talk about pills in the postpartum period, we are always talking about progesterone only pills.
Yes.
Sir, I would like
All
to...
right. So this, yes. Okay. So our approach has to be, we have to discuss her fears and address the myths and misconceptions and tell her whatever her manage her concerns. We have to respect her decision and discuss pros and cons, and we must address specific LARC advantages. Coming to the postpartum IUD, I think I'll ask this question to Vandana, to you.
To add something over here.
Yeah, how frequently do you use PP-IUD? Ketki, can you hear us now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So now in Navle, I'm sure you are doing a lot of work on postpartum intrauterine device. So what is your take? How frequently are you doing it in your clinical practice?
So we counsel all our patients for PP-IUCD. And in a year, we are inserting about somewhere around 250 to 270 PP-IUCD.
Okay.
And our experience is that since we have started counseling the patients for PP-IUCD, not only PP-IUCDs have increased, but the patients taking up interval IUCD has also increased.
Okay.
So even if they don't take up PP-IUCD, they'll come back after 6 weeks, and walk-in patients for IUCD have increased.
Okay. Now, since you are doing a lot of PP-IUD, how do you counsel these women? Do you counsel them on the labor table or delivery, or you counsel them in the antenatal period closer to the due date?
We counsel them in the antenatal OPD itself.
Okay.
And if they are counseled in antenatal OPD, then chances are more than they'll accept the PP-IUCD.
Right.
Those who are counseled during labor usually do not accept, but they might come later for interval insertion.
Okay. Now, Ketki, Meenal did mention about expulsion. That was our main concern. Now, what complications do you expect with PP-IUD and how they can be reduced? Since you're using a big number of post-placental IUD insertions, I think you should tell us how you counsel the patient positively, because at times when patient herself is not decided, you have to give her little direction to her thought process. That is number one. And secondly, how do you reduce the complications related to post-placental IUD insertion?
For counseling, basically we tell them that about the MTP, requirement of MTP, how patients come, and the number that we are doing the MTPs for unwanted pregnancies, and usually they accept that.
Okay.
And as far expulsion rates are concerned, with practice, we have found that the expulsion rates, they have reduced as we have been using it over the last few years. The expulsion rates have reduced.
Yeah. Can you roughly tell us the figure? Can you roughly tell us the figure of expulsion rate? Because Meenal did raise a concern about higher expulsion rates. So at your center, if you've studied, what is the expulsion rate at your center?
About 10% expulsion rate is there.
Okay.
But even if it is 10%, the 90% do retain, first point.
Right.
And secondly, those who have expelled, we ask them for follow-up.
Okay.
And then we can effectively counsel them for some other contraception if they are not willing for a copper T once again.
Okay. Fine. So Anaita, this is the question I want you to answer. What about intrauterine device after LSCS? Earlier in the discussion, you did raise a point about not using intrauterine device at 6 weeks. So when the lady had undergone C-section about LSCS 6 weeks ago.
I never mentioned that. I am happy to give any method at 6 weeks postpartum.
In fact, Meenal had mentioned and you had raised the point against it. So I'm asking you this question.
No. See,
When would you?
To add to the postpartum IUCD discussion, though we all know that the expulsion rate is high, we are able to catch such a large number of patients that even if the expulsion is high, we are still covering a larger segment of the population. And that was the logic of the government's program of PPIUCD. I think another very important point in the counseling is that she may not feel the threads. Because very often in a larger postpartum uterus, the threads coil up within the uterine cavity. And when she comes for the follow-up, she may not feel the threads and you may not feel the threads. There's no need to panic as long as the loop is within the uterine cavity. Coming to other methods of postpartum, Parag, I'm in fact saying that at 6 weeks, we should counsel all patients either for an LARC or an IUD or progesterone only method, whatever her choice based on what her long-term need is. So I'm not at all reluctant to put an IUCD at 6 weeks.
Okay, fine. Meenal, what is your reservation on putting IUCD at 6 weeks after LSCS?
I have no per se reservation, but in my clinical practice, I have noticed that sometimes if it is inadvertently put, you have to be very cautious when you have to put it. There's a whole likelihood that you might just go somewhere and there may be a small puff somewhere. So just there is no contraindication, of course, theoretically speaking, but here in our institute, it's not every time that we have to make sure that the trainee, the resident, every person who puts this has to put it very properly. And per se, I feel there are better methods also other than IUD LSCS. After about 6 months, 4 to 6 months, you can consider putting an IUD. I feel I'm more comfortable and safe while putting one. That's it. There is no other reason per se, but I can offer her some other method meanwhile, and then she can come to me after 6 months for an IUCD discussion.
So you rightly pointed out that at 6 weeks, woman who's lactating, the uterus might be a little softer as compared to a normal non-pregnant uterus, and that could be a reason why there could be perforation if due precautions are not taken. Prakash, what is your view on sterilization with second cesarean section? Nowadays, many times patient who comes for repeat cesarean section do ask about tubectomy along with the second cesarean section, so that they don't want the hassle of becoming pregnant again, or they don't want the hassle of unwanted pregnancy again. What is your take? First child is 3 years old, second child is 1 year, second child is just to be born. Will you do tubal ligation for this patient?
For the tubal ligation in second cesarean section, normally the eldest one should be around more than 1 year. That is the norm or requirement. And while doing sterilization, we can offer the patient, we can counsel the patient for sterilization in cesarean section. But while doing sterilization, we have to explain that tubes are edematous, and the failure is to the interval.
Hello.
So that has to be explained to the relatives and the patient as well as. So if the eldest one is more than 1 year, we can offer and we can go for the sterilization in the second.
Yeah, so if the patient has come to you who's delivered 1 year ago and now she's come back again for a C-section, will you do her sterilization? Because this is a common thing which we come across in Kamala Nehru Hospital, and then we are a little reluctant to do sterilization because when the first baby is small, second baby is not immunized, we are always worried about their morbidity associated with these babies who are not immunized. Right, Anaita, will you?
We discuss with the pediatrician most of the times. The pediatrician usually say that the eldest one should be more than 5 years, because in between the 5 years the vaccinations get completed. Okay. And we can offer them to do the sterilization.
Absolutely, and the Government of India guidelines on sterilization do mention that the first child should be 5 years and the second one should be 2 years, right? But many a times people want to, get rid of the contraception so that they don't have to use any other methods. I'm really scared.
There are
about doing this. Yeah.
There are 2 points. One is,
Yes,
as he rightly mentioned, the tubes are edematous. So even when we are taking the consent for TL, when the first child is also small and the second one is just born at LSCS, we usually say very clearly that chances of failure are there and reversal is difficult.
Yes.
So, you know, when we put that thought in the patient's mind, that reversal is not easy, so think twice. But
Yes.
on the other hand, if she demands and we have counseled her about all the options and she still wants, I don't see any reason why we should not go ahead and do the TL.
No, we should go ahead and do it. But then here we would certainly like to offer her other options which are equally safe and effective and yet reversible. Because you know what I personally feel is that when you do a sterilization, especially at the time of C-section, you tend to remove a bigger chunk of the tube. And then if at all you need to recanalize it, it becomes really messy.
One more point I want to add. I don't know what happens, but many a times, if you have done a cesarean section and you do, I mean, as you said in this particular scenario, it's the second baby. Just in case there is some complication during cesarean section or post delivery, it is a really dicey situation for the obstetrician who has already done the tubectomy, because whatever complication, whatever may be, when there is a tubectomy done along with a cesarean section, it is always one fear factor. I don't know what other panelists would want to put light on this. I always dread this.
Yes.
Yes, I also
agree.
I agree with you, Minal, because आमच्या इथे असं म्हटलं जातं की ट्युबेक्टॉमी केली आहे तुम्ही पेशंटची आणि नंतर तिला केस जरी लागली तर त्या डॉक्टरचा फॉल्ट आहे असंच म्हणतात सर. म्हणजे काही जरी झालं त्याच्यानंतर ती इफ शी गोज बॅक आफ्टर गेटिंग डिस्चार्ज फ्रॉम युअर हॉस्पिटल शी इज ओके बट शी डेव्हलप एनिथिंग आफ्टर 1 or 2 months, then also the blame comes on the obstetrician.
All right. Okay, we move next, and Nalini, I'm going to ask you this question: when to start using contraception? So, is it the same if the patient has had a vaginal delivery or if she has had a C-section? How early we should start?
We can start after 6 weeks also, but generally before 3 months of delivery, we should start the contraception. That is the key. And we can tell her the option of injectable progesterone. In the meantime, if at all she is not ready to insert the IUDs, then in that case we can tell her that you can use the injectable progesterone. So by every 3 monthly she can have that injectable progesterone.
Okay. Vandana, what about women who are breastfeeding and women who are not breastfeeding? Will the initiation of contraception should be the same, or is there any difference in it? Vandana?
Shall I? If the patient is breastfeeding.
Am I audible?
Yeah, Vandana.
Hello?
Yes, Vandana.
Yeah, but there is lot of lagging behind in this. I'm not able to hear what is asked.
Okay. So the question that I asked you was, we are talking about initiation of contraception after childbirth.
Yes,
now,
yes.
what is the difference between women who are breastfeeding, and what is the difference between, and how different is it from women who are not breastfeeding?
As far as the women who are breastfeeding, we can start the contraception within 3 months. But those women who are not breastfeeding, I think immediately within a month's time, they should think of start using some contraception. Because breastfeeding, to some extent, gives contraceptive advantage. But whereas if she is not breastfeeding, then she needs to be thinking or starting contraception a little early than the breastfeeding lady.
Absolutely. So what? Yes, Anaita.
I think there is an error on your slide.
6, yeah, it should be 6
It should
weeks.
be 6 months
6 weeks.
postpartum for the fully breastfeeding and 6 weeks for the partial.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
I also wanted to add a point about injectable progesterone. That the previous speaker said very clearly that it's a good idea to give her at least one injection while she makes up her mind what to do. And you can initiate the first Depo-Provera as early as 6 weeks. So at that 6-week visit, whether she's fully breastfeeding, partially breastfeeding, not breastfeeding, this is the time we should just give her the first injection.
Yeah,
so that
right.
we know that she has 3 months to make up her mind.
Yes,
The
and
second
especially,
the second advantage is that her cycles have not resumed. So she will accept the amenorrhea or the spotting, irregular bleeding, even if she is on progesterone for the first few months or years following the delivery.
Right. All right. So this slide definitely shows us that there is difference of initiation of contraception in women who are non-breastfeeding. It is recommended that they should start using contraception 3 to 4 weeks postpartum, and women who are fully breastfed, it is 6 months. And these are the WHO recommendations about IUD insertion, and there we are also talking about the LNG intrauterine system. The recommendations are a little different. Of course, we can use it before 48 hours of childbirth, and if not after 48 hours, it should be more than 4 weeks after childbirth. There are some studies which do mention about NGs certain time of cesarean section or immediate, like a post-placental insertion, right? But as far as postpartum is concerned, there is a little difference between LNG intrauterine system and copper intrauterine device, right? So this lady finally, she changed her mind and finally had an intrauterine device inserted. She returned 6 months later with an 8 weeks pregnancy confirmed on USG. Ketki, now you tell us how will you address the future contraceptive needs?
We first need to find out if that copper T is still there or it has expelled, and what are her demands, whether she wants to now continue with this pregnancy or she wants MTP.
Okay. So she does want MTP, which we will manage, but then how to address her contraceptive needs? So let's focus only on her contraceptive needs right now.
If we are going ahead with MTP, we can counsel her for copper T insertion in the same sitting.
Okay.
Now this patient, she may be reluctant to go for a ICD insertion once again, now that she had a previous experience which was a failure. So in case she is not willing, then we can go ahead with either COCs or injectable contraception for her.
Okay. Any other opinion from any of the panelists? All right. So we will certainly discuss about all these options again before she makes a decision. And these are some issues where I'm referring to the WHO medical eligibility criteria. POPs and implants can be used immediately after delivery. Injectable can be given after 6 weeks, and LNG IUS may also be used as an alternative to copper intrauterine device as a postpartum device less than 48 hours and after 4 weeks. Now let's address issues related to unscheduled bleeding and spotting. We know that whenever we are recommending these 3 options, the copper intrauterine devices, the LNG intrauterine devices, and implants, there could be some options, there could be some issues related to the unscheduled bleeding. So Meenal, what will you do if she's if a woman who's using a copper device comes to you with heavy bleeding? How will you counsel her and how will you manage her?
First and foremost, when has she put this copper device is very important. And maybe the device is very recently put, and you will have to ask her exactly how much bleeding is there, what is the pattern, is she bleeding throughout the full length of the time, or is there intermittent episodes of heavy bleeding? All this has to be properly asked in history. And copper devices are known to cause heavy bleeding. They can even cause heavy cramps also. So if it is just in the beginning period, you will have to reassure her. You may have to add medication like antifibrinolytics, tranexamic acid, mefenamic acid, NSAIDs like mefenamic acid. All these can help in stopping it. However, if it doesn't, and if it continues to trouble her, also another very important thing, if she's kept it for a long time, it is very important to examine if there is any other pelvic inflammatory disease that she has come many a times with copper devices, with intrauterine devices. Pelvic inflammatory disease is seen, and that can also cause heavy bleeding. So if there needs to be, you need to even add an antibiotic, give her an antibiotic course, give her antifibrinolytics, watch, and again reassure her, just see how she responds. However, if it continues to happen and maybe she is not in a position, then we may have to replace it with another intrauterine device and remove this copper device.
Okay. Minal, here I would like to differ in your thoughts. And Anaita, I thought you will raise your hand and raise this issue. Minal did mention about Minal did mention about increased chances of pelvic inflammatory disease with intrauterine device, which I beg to differ. Yeah, which I beg to differ. So Anaita, I want you to comment on this.
No, actually, I think when we are inserting the copper T, the important history which we don't ask is multiple sexual partners and previous PID. So those are the contraindications. And I don't think the IUD itself will be a cause for PID.
Yes,
unless she has some other...
I do agree that IUD will not cause PID, but maybe over a period of time, we don't know how long she has put. If she has put, maybe she contracted it a little later. It may not be necessarily due to the IUD per se, but it has to be addressed.
Minal, I think here I just 1 minute.
We should de-link these two.
Yes.
Otherwise, our counseling strategy is going to fall through.
Right.
Introduce the concept that you might get infection, which patient is going to want to put the loop?
Right.
Sir, I will add one thing.
I have to add one thing. Hello.
Yes, Nalini.
That we have to see whether the copper T is in situ or not.
Yes,
sometimes
absolutely.
what happens, it comes down and then the patient might have bleeding and spotting intermittently.
Yeah. So here, Nalini, we are presuming
more thing I
much in place, and she's complaining of heavy menstrual bleeding. So these are the medical options. Prakash, I'll ask the next question to you. What about if the woman comes to you with irregular bleeding and spotting, and she's using LNG intrauterine system, then how will you tackle this problem?
I will do the ultrasonography. I will check where the copper T is there. Is it displaced down or it is coming down in the cervix?
Okay.
One more thing, the uterine, sometimes if there is any uterine fibroid is there, then distorted uterine cavity is there. That may cause bleeding. And another thing, we along with this all NSAID, antifibrinolytic agent and antiprogesterone agent, I will add sometimes if needed estrogen also. Estrogen as a treatment for a few days, and if the patient gets settled on the estrogen, I will stop the estrogen and then I will continue the intrauterine devices. Still,
we are talking about, Prakash, are you talking about the LNG intrauterine system or the copper intrauterine? Because I'm asking you, yeah, I'm asking about the LNG intrauterine system.
Yeah. I can add estrogen also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. See, many times what happens is whenever we come across women who have had LNG intrauterine device, we tend to give progesterone and hope that the bleeding stops. But mind well, the LNG is already releasing some amount of progesterone in the endometrial cavity. And most of the patients do respond when you add estrogen to it. Of course, the slide does mention about a lot of other options. I have never used mifepristone or ulipristal to arrest the bleeding of women who have been using LNG intrauterine system. Most of them will, respond well to tranexamic acid plus minus mefenamic acid, and the bleeding reduces. Anaita, I'm going to ask this next question to you.
Progesterone causes the fragile endometrium, fragile endometrial vessels, and that may cause bleeding most of the times. So adding estrogen will help bleeding.
It makes sense. Absolutely. Anaita, this next question is to you because none of the other cities have the implants. We don't have implant available in Pune, and it is available only in Mumbai, in Maharashtra. So how will you manage irregular bleeding or spotting in a woman who's using ENG implant?
So I have to make 3 points about progesterone only methods. The first and the most important is whether you use POP, whether you use DMPA, whether you use an implant or whether you use an LNG IUS, all progesterone only methods will cause what is known as menstrual chaos for the first 3 months or 6 months.
Yeah.
So the second point is counseling is extremely important prior to making any patient use one of these methods. And we have to tell her that she has to be able to monitor her cycles for the first 3 months, where she may have bleeding or spotting days, or she may have amenorrhea. And we have to also tell her that we can't predict whether she will be in the amenorrhea group, the bleeding spotting group, or the heavy bleeding group. The third and the most effective point in the contraception is that if it is an implant, if it is an LNG IUS, or if it is an injectable, the efficacy, the contraceptive efficacy is so high that we should explain to her that you should just, bear with, be patient with these side effects for 3 to 4 months, because over the long term, you settle down into amenorrhea, and the contraceptive efficacy is what is going to sell this method to the patient.
Right.
Now coming to the implant, basically for the implant, unlike the injectable, only about 50% of patients will have amenorrhea. And about a large proportion, about 30 to 40% of patients will still have a regular cyclical bleeding, even with the etonogestrel implant. And that's an important point again, that the implant is a wonderful device. If there is bleeding, you can control it with antiprogestins, though I have not used, and again, mefenamic acid, etc. But the implant, to keep in mind, has to be surgically implanted and surgically removed.
Yes.
So it, counseling is the most important step in these patients. And in fact, WHO has what they call a 90-day reference period. And so the patients are taught that in a 90-day cycle, how many times do you bleed or spot, which gives us an idea whether there is actually a menstrual chaos or not. But I think all the methods that you have mentioned, I haven't really tried any of these except mefenamic acid or tranexamic acid, and sometimes maybe estrogen and progesterone sometimes.
Right. This is what the literature mentioned. That's why I've put it here. All right, we move to the fourth case, and Vandana, this is for you. There are some couples who are not willing to adopt any modern contraceptives. There could be religious issues, cultural beliefs, or even social issues. So what is your take on this, and what options will you offer them?
So we should, in the couple who are not willing to opt any of the contraceptive, we should just want to know why they are annoyed, or what is the reason why they don't want to go for any using of any contraceptives.
Okay.
And if still suppose few couples will be there that they don't want to go with a routine contraceptives, then we should explain them for the natural methods of contraception, which we have since our olden days, like withdrawal method, safe period method. This we can explain them and tend to teach them.
Right.
Parag, before you go ahead.
Yes, Arshad.
Yeah, before you go, I just wanted to welcome our past presidents who are here, Dr. Subhash Nargolkar, Dr. Avinash Budkar, Dr. Savita Mende, Dr. Smita Zog, and also our Foxy Committee Chairperson, Dr. Kunda Ningre, who is also for this. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure that so many seniors are also listening to us. Yes, here when we talk about these methods, we have to explain the client, we should say. We should not call her patient, because these are the clients who come to us seeking contraceptive help, that these methods do have their own set of problems, especially the failure rate, and the couple has to be aware about these methods, and precision is something which is really required, especially when we are talking about withdrawal method.
Here I would like to add, Parag, that we should emphasize that termination of pregnancy is not a method of contraception, but just a backup when contraceptive methods fail. And we have to highlight that all these natural methods have a very high failure rate.
Right. Okay, we move on to the fifth case, and she's a 41-year-old lady and mother of 2. She has had an induced abortion a couple of years ago. Her younger daughter is now 12 years old, and as a couple, they do not want any more children. She does not want to have another abortion and asks you for birth control options. Minal, how will you help her?
Well, I think first and foremost, she's 41-year-old. You must, of course, a good history is very important. Offering her different options. She's obese. She's having.
Ashwini, can we have audience muted, please?
Sorry. So, looking at her obesity and her dyslipidemia, of course, hormonal contraception is a big no to her. At this particular age, an intrauterine contraceptive device or probably an LARC also will work wonders for this particular patient. And the other non-hormonal methods like Centroman may be considered, but when you have something which is a tier 1 and is independent of the user, like the LARC, that would be the best way in which I could counsel her for going ahead with this particular method of contraception.
Okay, Nalini, can you just talk about Centroman, because somehow in my practice I've not used Centroman as a contraceptive option. So what is your take on this? Have you used it in your patients?
Yes, I have used it. I have used it in the patient of DUB, wherein we can start with the twice a week Centroman for 3 months, and then afterwards only once in a week we can give to the patient. In DUB cases, they are fed up with the bleeding, so it is very good drug for these cases.
Okay. Prakash, you want to add something to it?
In the age more than 40 years, where fecundity rate is comparatively less, the adding estrogen will not much more benefit. We can single progesterone only pills or only injectable progesterone can help after age of 40 years.
Okay, so if she's obese, if she has dyslipidemia, one will be reluctant to use combined oral contraceptive pills. Of course, there are options like LARC for this woman.
But I feel that suppose the patient has been taking combined OCs in, suppose she started taking at 38 or 39 and now she's 41 and she still wants to continue. I think it is WHO MEC category 2 or,
yes.
When it moves to category 3, we should definitely disregard or stop this method. But if we are able to follow up a patient who is very comfortable with that method, then there is no harm in her taking OCs, low dose OCs, even with mild obesity and dyslipidemia till 45. I think beyond 45, we should look at the other options, but at 41, we should not disregard OC pills also.
Yeah, but then we need extensive counseling, and the patient has to understand the implication, and she has to be willing for a follow-up.
Yes.
We move to the next case, and we are...
if she is having history of, hello?
Yes, Ketki, go on.
Having history of heavy menstrual bleeding, then we can give her option of LNG IUS as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So
both of her problems.
Yes, yes. Okay, now a busy 29-year-old lawyer who has a 6-month-old child, she comes to you, she gives history of heavy menstrual bleeding prior to the childbirth. You examine her, the uterus is irregular but not grossly enlarged. Ultrasound is ordered and it reveals small intramural fibroids. She does not desire pregnancy in the near future. Ketki, you can take this. What are the options for this lady? She's 29, heavy menstrual bleeding. She's a 6-month-old child.
I think we can offer her LNG IUS.
Okay.
That will resolve her, that will give her contraception as well as her heavy menstrual bleeding, and it might prevent further growth of the fibroid that she is having.
All right. Though the literature does not support, I have used it I have used it in quite a few patients of heavy menstrual bleeding with a fibroid, and we have noted a good amount of reduction in the size of the fibroid as well as bleeding. Though the literature does not support it, but it does help. And of course, this lady can have other options. You can always offer her DMPA, which will take care of the heavy menstrual bleeding if she has. COCs, again, if she's lactating, we will certainly not like to use COCs at this point of time. But if she's not lactating, we can offer her COCs and implants as well. And this is how the LNG intrauterine system helps in reduction in the amount of bleeding. Right. Manisha, we move to the next case, and I want you to take this case. A 27-year-old woman with a pregnancy of 7 weeks. She's referred to you for termination of pregnancy. She has one living child. She's a known diabetic on metformin. She's smoking 18 to 20 cigarettes a day, and she also wants options for contraception.
Sir, first of all, after taking the detailed history and examination, her MTP will be done. Whatever the choice, medical termination of pregnancy will be my choice to terminate her pregnancy.
Okay.
Then, but she is known diabetic. She smokes. She's a chronic smoker. So my choice for giving her the choice of contraception will not be the combined oral pills. I will ask her to go for a, because if her diabetes is under control, she can opt for IUCD, intrauterine copper device, and maybe an LNG IUS also, or the DMPA.
Right.
Barrier contraception, yes, but we should also warn her that sometimes there may be failure due to barrier contraception.
All right. Anahita, you want to comment on this?
I had a point to make about LNG IUS in younger women. You know, most of the patients we are using it for, we are using in the AUB or the older women for contraception as well as heavy menstrual
Treatment.
Right.
When we use LNG IUS in younger women for contraception purely, one of the commonest side effects noted is depression and weight gain. And the depression can be quite profound. I don't know why it is so in the younger women. So I agree with all your options, and probably in this patient, I would, rather than giving her the copper device, I may primarily opt for an LNG IUS in this diabetic patient, or even the DMPA.
All right. Just deviate from the panel. Suppose a 20-year-old girl comes to you, she's sexually active, she's with a single partner, she's definitely not keen on having a conception. How many of you will counsel her about an intrauterine device? Prakash? She's 20, she's with one partner, yes, she's with one partner, not interested in pregnancy for next 5 years.
Normally we have to offer all these treatment options. This is a capillary approach, but intrauterine device is
she's keen on having an intrauterine device inserted. Will you do it? Will you not do it?
We can.
If she is insisting and not accepting the other mode of the contraception, then we can insert it.
Okay, Manisha?
Sir, this inserting an IUD will be the best option for her if she is not planning any pregnancy for the coming 5 years.
Yes.
I would definitely give her the choice of contraception, of this type of contraception.
Okay, Nalini, when we were students, we were always told that intrauterine devices are not meant for nulliparous. Intrauterine devices are not meant for adolescents.
Young girls. Yeah.
You still
The main hurdle is that there are chances of PID and the tubal block in these patients. So, but if we take more precautions, and if we counsel her about that, and if still she is willing for the this intrauterine contraceptive device, then we can put that device in her.
Okay, Nalini, we did discuss about PID and tubal block, and we did have a discussion about it, that if you are using intrauterine device in an incorrectly selected patient or in client who's already suffering from pelvic inflammation, which probably we have missed on our examination. Yes, I will agree with you that it is likely to flare up the intrauterine infection and she's likely to have all these problems. But I will certainly not have the fear of tubal block or PID if I've selected the woman rightly. I agree, she's young. So when we are talking about contraception in younger women, it is possible that expulsion of the device may be a little more than women who are paras. If she's with a single partner, again, I'm not saying she's not likely, but she's unlikely to contract a pelvic or a sexually transmitted infection. And I would still not be hesitant in offering intrauterine contraception to this lady. And just a quick word about contraception after medical abortion. We can actually start combined oral contraceptive pills on the day of misoprostol. We can start it as early as that. Sterilization intrauterine device progesterone only methods are to be offered only after we are sure that the abortion is complete. So which would be 2 weeks after taking mifepristone, either by a clinical examination or better by an ultrasound, where we ensure that the products have been evacuated. Condoms or vaginal tablets can be started immediately after the bleeding stops. So in fact, in the same cycle, the client can think of these options, and of course natural methods, DMPA, ring, etc., to be offered only after next menses. We move to the next case, and Vandana, you can take this. A 38-year-old patient who has completed her family. She's referred to you for sterilization by a primary care physician. She has had 3 cesarean sections. Last delivery was 3 years ago. She's a known hypertensive. Her lipids are abnormal. She's 5'5", but her weight is 100 kgs. Her BP today is 162 by 104 millimeters of mercury. You examine her and you find out that the uterus is bulky, regular, and the mobility is restricted. How will you approach this lady?
Difficult to decide, but still.
That's why I'm posing these questions to this esteemed panel.
She had previous 3 cesarean sections, so there could be very chances of adhesions as far as the sterilization is considered.
Okay.
We can think of hormone containing IUCDs, that is LNG IUS, or even in copper T, which is a long LARC. And better will be to counsel the husband to go ahead with an vasectomy.
Right.
Absolutely.
Going for a tubectomy.
Vandana, I totally agree with you, but I can see Prakash is getting impatient and he wants to offer her tubectomy. Prakash, what all precautions will you take when you're offering a tubectomy to this lady?
Yeah, so
Prakash is a good endoscopist, so he's tempted to put in a telescope. I would be a little hesitant to put a scope inside this woman who has so many medical problems. Prakash.
If she want to do the sterilization by permanent sterilization, and even if she has 3 previous LSS, we can best way go by laparoscopic tubal.
Okay, she is hypertensive. She has abnormal lipids.
Yeah. It is no problem because her weight is not more. It is weight is hard. 100
kg is good weight.
But still we can do.
Risk is there. She's physically fit and fit for surgery. We can go for the laparoscopy.
Absolutely. So the laparoscopy can certainly be offered to this woman. But if I was managing this woman, I would definitely counsel the husband to undergo a no scalpel vasectomy. And we know that it's such a simple procedure. It is done on an OPD basis. It is over in 10 to 15 minutes. Of course, the client walks in and walks out without much hassles. What is important is to ask the husband to get a semen test done 3 months down the line, just to make sure that there are no sperms in the semen sample. Now, this particular lady.
Parag, can I say?
Yes, Anaita. Yes.
We just need to keep in mind that the GR, the government regulations say that previous LSCS and obesity, hypertension, etc. are relative contraindications to LAP-TL. So in case, God forbid, you do land up with a complication, you are going to be in a soup, because previous LSCS is, as per the GR, a contraindication.
All right. So this lady went to Prakash, and Prakash decided to agree what you have said, and he offered her intrauterine device. The intrauterine device was inserted without any hassles. Now, Manisha, can you extend this device? Can the woman continue using this device for a long time?
Yes, sir. The
We know that the
can-
copper 380A is to be used for 10 years.
10 years.
Yes.
Yeah. So she comes back to you, at the age of 49. She's very much sexually active. She's very firm that she does not want any more children, and she's not keen on changing the contraceptive method that she's using. So will you ask her to continue the same device, or will you change it? What is your take on this?
Sir, we can seeing the period of the insertion of the copper T when it was
10 years.
inserted.
10 years are completed.
10 years are complete. We will ask her to change, because what happens, she is in the perimenopausal age group now. So the spontaneous fertility beyond this is rare, and this IUCD can be effectively used in these people and can be continued.
Right. So in fact, there are few studies which do mention that we need not change the device. We can continue using the same device for a longer period of time, and it does offer similar protection in women who are at this age. Okay, Meenal, this is for you. What issues you will consider when offering contraception in a woman who has undergone bariatric surgery? We do come across women who undergo bariatric surgery these days, and they do seek contraception. How will you handle this lady?
Well, patients.
Meenal, you are muted.
Muted me.
Yeah.
Anyway, actually, when patients come with pediatric surgery, they have had a gastric bypass, and therefore a big no to hormonal contraception, because they may not well absorb them, and therefore absorption is a big problem in these patients. So I would definitely not give her this option of hormonal contraception. After bariatric surgery, it is imperative that the patient does not conceive for at least a year, and non-hormonal or best would be an intrauterine device, either a copper device also would suffice and help her. Or,
right.
Of course, barriers are always the most commonly used, but effective contraception would be a copper device.
Absolutely. So it is important that we tell her that effective contraception is very much necessary for almost 12 to 18 months, where we would certainly not like her to conceive. And as Meenal has rightly said, because of the risk of malabsorption of hormones, combined or even progesterone only pills are ideally not to be used. Other methods can certainly be used. And when we are living with COVID for last 4 or 5 months, Nalini, can you talk about contraception in COVID times? Because any discussion nowadays is not complete without COVID times.
In COVID times, as far as possible, one should avoid the hormonal contraception, because sometimes if at all she is having COVID infection, then the chances of thromboembolism are high. Okay. So one should avoid the oral contraceptive pills. Instead, one can we can offer her intrauterine contraceptive device, or non-hormonal or barrier method can be prescribed.
Okay, Anaita.
I don't agree. If she's COVID positive, she should stop the OC pill. But in COVID times, there is nothing to say that she cannot take OCs. So we should not be sending out a message that she should not take hormonal contraception.
Absolutely. So all modern methods of contraception which are helpful to prevent pregnancy can be used. As Anaita very rightly pointed out, if she turns out to be COVID positive and if she's taking pills, we would COCs, we would certainly ask her to stop taking them. And of course, emergency contraceptive is something which we have to tell her, and we have to counsel the women the same way we would counsel. Otherwise, of course, they may not be sitting in front of you, but then telecounseling or teleconsultation is something which can be adopted. And we must not forget that the method of contraception is the one that works well for the couple. So ultimately it will be the couple's choice, and we have to counsel them to protect themselves against infections also. Right, so we are coming to the close to the end of the panel, but there's a rapid fire question, and I'm going to ask these questions to the panelists. Manisha, the first one is for you. What is your take intrauterine device in previous ectopic? Again, there was a time when we were taught that if woman has an ectopic pregnancy, one should not use intrauterine device. So what is the current state? Manisha? Manisha, you are muted.
Yes. Sir, IUD are known to cause ectopics, but with previous ectopic, we cannot deny her that every time there will be ectopic pregnancy. If she has a history of PID or other like that tubal occlusion, then we can deny her that she should not put on IUD and can go for other options of contraception.
Okay, Manisha, here I beg to differ with you, because IUDs, there was a time probably when we were students, we always believed that ectopics are more common, but the world literature does mention that intrauterine devices are very much effective in preventing intrauterine as well as extrauterine contraception. So woman who has already had an ectopic pregnancy and is desirous of an intrauterine device, it can be offered to her. This we have already discussed. IUD causes PID, and the answer is a big no. Minal, what about IUD in endocarditis, rheumatic heart disease, prosthetic valves? Because again, when we were students, we were always told that we should not use intrauterine.
Yeah, yes. When you are having such a patient of endocarditis or previous rheumatic heart disease, prosthetic heart valves, you have to, it is, of course, there is you can put, but you have to be very guarded, and you have to make sure that the patient is there with you for regular follow-up, and there should not be any problem.
Absolutely. So initially, what was considered as contraindication is no more true. Of course, when you're inserting the device, you will take all due precautions and try and prevent SABE. But this intrauterine devices can be offered to women with these heart conditions. Okay, Nalini, what about intrauterine device in HIV positive patients?
It can be inserted in HIV positive patients also. We can try for this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. It can certainly be used
there
in
is
women
no
who have HIV. Anahita, what contraceptives for endometriosis? What will you?
LNG IUS would be my choice because it is also recommended for use. Other methods are not recommended for use. Of course, OC pills as well.
Right. So apart from LNG IUS, there are studies which have used POPs and DMPA as contraceptives for women with endometriosis. Prakash, what about contraceptive for women who has adenomyosis?
We can start progesterone only contraception or injectable contraceptions.
Okay. But the best
LNG
would be LNG intrauterine system.
LNG.
Yeah. Ketki, what about contraception for a woman who has abnormal uterine bleeding?
If the age of the woman would be a deciding factor, I think. If she's a young woman, then we can give her combined OC pills. But if she's more than 35 years of age, then either DMPA or LNG IUS would be preferred.
All right. So COCs and LNG intrauterine system can certainly be considered. Of course, age and other factors have to be considered. And Vandana, this is for you, 35-year-old woman on anticoagulant treatment. What will be your choice of contraception? Vandana?
Unmute yourself.
Is Vandana there? I can't see her.
She's there.
Yeah.
She's muted, Parag.
She's muted herself.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wait. Yeah.
35-year-old woman with on anticoagulant treatment. What is your choice of contraceptive?
35-year-old with an anticoagulants. LNGIS?
Yes, LNGIS is the choice. All right. So with this, I would just like to mention about something which I read just yesterday, and I just could not resist but thought of sharing this new contraceptive which was described in the last month. It is something called Phexxi, which is a gel form. It contains lactic acid, citric acid, and potassium biotart. It is designed to maintain acidic vaginal environment, which is inhospitable to sperm. And the dose is about 5 grams, which is inserted vaginally immediately before or up to 1 hour before each episode of vaginal intercourse. The study which was published recently had about 1,200 participants where 101 pregnancies were reported. So the cumulative pregnancy rate was about 13.7%, and the Pearl index was about 27.5 pregnancies per 100 woman years. For non-oxynol, it is 9 to 28. There were some adverse events noted, like vulvovaginal irritation, fungal infections, and urinary tract infections. So women who wish to avoid use of hormones and who are comfortable choosing a vaginal contraceptive with a failure rate comparable to that of currently available over-the-counter spermicide, they do have one addition in their basket. And I would like to conclude this panel by saying you can save more lives of women by offering them contraception. Of course, it has to be the right contraception for the right woman. We must try to make an effort to discuss spacing and limiting options with women at every opportunity so that they are aware about various options that they have. Never force or offer options and let them make an informed choice. I personally believe that if you offer, if the woman decides contraceptive for herself, it is likely that she will accept it better and she will continue using it for the desired period of time. And as all the panelists said, try to involve men in family planning decisions and generate awareness to combat myths. So once again, on behalf of POJS and myself, I would like to thank all the panelists. Thank you, Anahita. Thank you, Meenal. Thank you, Manisha. Thank you, Nalini. Thank you, Prakash. Thank you, Ketki, though we missed you for some time. And thank you, Vandana. So, and once again, thank you, Harshad, for making me part of this panel.
Thank you, Parag sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Parag. Thank you, Harshad sir.
Thank you for selecting the right topic in the COVID time, lockdown period.
Yeah, before that, just one question which is there, asked by Ajay Srivastav sir. He is saying, a 41-year-old woman, why can't you offer a tubectomy for her?
Of course, you can offer.
We
are talking about other options.
Okay.
Sir, I think there's one more question from Dr. Santosh Kirloskar. Any medico-legal problems in doing tubectomy for a widow? Whose consent should we take as witness?
Okay. Now, as far as I know, the government regulation does mention that the woman has to be married. There's no mention about a widow or an unmarried lady, right? So as of now, Anahita, you can correct me if I'm wrong. As far as my knowledge goes, it is meant only for married women.
You know, we have operated on widows and single women also in the past. As long as she is giving a proper consent, I don't think there is anything wrong in doing a tubectomy for a widow.
Okay.
Parag, the same point was raised in one of the medico-legal conferences also, and there the same point was discussed, and they said that if the proper consent is there, nobody stops you from doing a TL on a widow.
Right.
See the government form for tubectomy. The first line of the form itself says that in a currently married woman, you are undergoing a tubectomy.
Right. Harshad, similar to what MTP form says, that the indication for termination of pregnancy is the use of failure of contraception in a married woman.
Yes.
Right. So whenever an unmarried lady comes to us for termination of pregnancy, we don't raise the clause as failure of contraception. We have to take it otherwise. Right. So thank you very much, all the panelists, and thank you, Harshad. Over to you.
Thank you, Harshad.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Harshad sir.
yeah, generally
Thank you.
At the end,
Thank
I
you,
would
sir.
like to propose the vote of thanks. To begin with, I would like to thank Parag sir for moderating this wonderful session. I would also like to thank him and ICOG and Mandakini madam for granting 1 point for this webinar today. I would like to thank all the panelists who did a very wonderful job, and all the delegates. I would also take this opportunity to thank the past presidents who are there for today's webinar. Dr. Subhash Nargolkar sir, Smita Zog madam, Mahendra madam, and Avinash Gutkar sir. And also I would like to thank Dr. Kundan Ingre, who is the committee chairperson for infertility, FOXY, for attending the webinar. Thank you so much, all of you, for being there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Over to
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much, everybody.
Ashwini, you have to stop the meeting.